So this is the test site? Neiman asked as he stepped out of the teleportation gate. Yes, and I need you to secure the area with runes, another professor responded, glancing at Professor Neiman. Sigh, this old man needs rest sometimes, you know, Neiman joked, making the other professor a tad awkward. Both of them were selected to oversee the test site and ensure that nothing went wrong, but Neiman was the only one capable of securing a large territory accurately due to his proficiency in runic arts. Neiman noticed his fellow professor's reaction, but he merely laughed lightly. But it seems they're ramping up the difficulty considerably, Neiman observed, looking at Xander, who was also present. I don't mind these changes. They will help the students prepare for unexpected situations, Neiman stated. Well, but I still feel like it's too much for a first-year student, though most of them won't be affected by it, the other professor commented, following Neiman. 3 weeks had passed, and exams for various subjects were currently being conducted. I wonder how many students will pass my exams, Neiman mused, remembering the challenging test he had devised. This time he had amplified the difficulty slightly, making scoring high in his subject no easy task. And the reason? He was curious about the limits of the infamous rank 1 student, Asher Greville. At the World Academy, attention, students, the instructor shouted. We will give you various tasks and a sheet. Create these runes and record your answers on the sheet at the end, he explained. We will evaluate both your creations and answers when grading all of you, he added, signaling for distributing the test papers to the students seated in the class, including Asher. Asher scanned the paper. None of the questions seemed too challenging. Some would take some time, but he knew how to tackle such problems. So, it's about combining 2 elements into 1 rune. Asher deduced that the most difficult questions revolved around combining elements into a single rune, contemporary romance. It was a complex task that demanded substantial concentration and thought. Boom! Small explosions echoed as some students failed their tasks, attempting to combine the fire element with the wind too hastily. Ads by Pub Future. It was a known fact that mana was the only energy that could hold all the elements together, serving as a medium or fuel when used. 3 students have failed. You can leave after recording your answers. The instructor dismissed any students who had failed their creations. They had only 1 chance, so most approached the runes slowly and carefully. Though a safe strategy, taking too long meant the instructors would note this, which could negatively impact their grades. Elsewhere, a young man with white hair sat before a lone professor. Do you think you can answer all the questions? The professor asked with a smile. I heard you spent 2 weeks reaching D rank, he mentioned. I will try my best, Kevin replied, looking at the question. He was taking the examination on the lightning element, a subject only he among the first years had, and the professor in front of him was the one teaching the lightning element class. Your affinity is strong, so ensure you score high marks, the professor reminded Kevin. He perceived Kevin as a highly talented individual, but his thought processes were currently too narrow, and the professor understood why. Once lauded as a prodigy of his generation, Kevin was quickly forgotten when Asher began demonstrating his capabilities. He could reach the highest peak if he focuses on himself, the professor thought, monitoring Kevin's progress. It had already been 2 weeks since he reached D rank. He only lacked experience, which he would gain gradually. Don't worry. You will need to show your progress in the practical part of this exam as well, the professor reminded Kevin, who was still focused on answering the questions. This practical aspect was necessary for the exam, as professors would make the students demonstrate their capabilities to evaluate their understanding. However, most of the grading was done by analyzing the performance of the student in clearing dungeons and hunting monsters. The purpose of the World Academy was to train exceptional hunters who could provide stability to the world. However, due to the existence of elite families and social statuses, World Academy was not a simple academy anymore. Every student enrolled here had a plan for what they wanted to achieve while studying. Some had straightforward goals, while others didn't think too hard about it. Yet some had more complex motivations for studying here. The power struggle between elite families persisted over the years, and World Academy became a place where they compared the upcoming generation. It became a matter of pride for some people. But there were also others whose motives were not simple at all. One of them was Leonard Tervian, who was rallying many people to the cause of his faction, the Blood faction. Many believed it was simply to oppose the student council, where only one student, the student council president, held all the power, but it was all a ruse. Not even those close to Leonard knew what he genuinely wanted to achieve by doing all this. Only he and his father Osbert were privy to their real plan. Unbeknownst to them, another person at World Academy knew about their schemes. Yes, father, I have controlled the rumors, Leonard told Osbert. Don't bother controlling idiots, Leonard. They will become the reason for your downfall, Osbert advised his son. I understand, father, Leonard replied. What about the World Association? I heard rumors about some issues. Leonard queried. It's nothing significant. A new pest that is bothering the upper society has appeared, but we don't need to focus on them, Osbert assured. Don't rush into things without a plan, and ignore Greville for now, Osbert directed, causing Leonard to raise an eyebrow. What plan? Leonard inquired. Osbert's sharp gaze looked at his son for a moment before he opened his mouth. No need to worry about it. Attend the Kalwas Gala. I'll explain there, Osbert said before disconnecting the call. Even though he's my father, he is scary, Leonard admitted, feeling slightly cold. But he smiled, knowing that his father's influence was the reason nobody challenged him. Even those from the elite families didn't dare disrespect him, knowing he was the son of Osbert Tervian. It's not enough. It's not fun this way, father, Leonard smirked, looking at the chessboard before him. While Osbert preferred to move with a plan and eliminate any threats, Leonard enjoyed toying with his prey. I will take it from here, Leonard declared, moving the knight forward on the chessboard. I know what card you want to play, but they won't move easily. Leonard remembered the message he received from Jaden Hargrave about rejecting the deal he had offered. A week went by as the examinations kept going on. Why are the questions so hard this time? A student grumbled on his way to the dorms. Some people who had chosen hard subjects were lamenting their choices, but a few, like Eva Williams, were confident in their academic abilities. Only one more exam that we have, the main part of the midterm examination, one student reminded them. Hey, don't talk about that. I am too stressed right now to think hard about that, another replied, rubbing his head. Unlike Asher and Kevin's team, most other teams didn't spend much time practicing together. And that was because the teams kept changing till the last second. Did you hear the rumors that Blood Faction's members bully normal students like us? One of them said, but others started frowning. Stop saying all this crap, and focus on your exams. His friend slapped his back as he shook his head. Why would they bother with us? His friend said as they stepped towards their dorms. Yeah, don't feed my brain all this drama. Instead, tell me something meaningful, the one stressing about his exam said. His words made them laugh, and they forgot the topic. Every day a new rumor would appear in World Academy, and most of the time, it would not be true. And right now, not many people are in the mood to spread or listen to such rumors. It was the next day, and all the mage students were called to the stadium at the outer sector of World Academy. The stadium was huge, and in the center, Professor Elsa, Professor Dahlia, and Professor Erman were present. Isn't it different from last year? I heard that last time it was a simple spell demonstration, one of the girls asked her friends, but they were equally confused. Is it different this time? Amelia asked Asher, who was sitting beside her. Maybe, Asher replied as he kept looking at the stadium. So, They integrated the beast theory course here first. Asher noticed the change due to him. In his previous life, this sort of exam for majors was introduced later after he was nearing the end of his second year. Everyone, attention here, Arman commanded, and all students started to look at him. Right now, the three most popular professors of World Academy were standing together, so many eyes full of admiration were looking at them. All three of them looked like they were in their early 30s, and their features were attractive, so it was obvious why young people liked them more than the other old professors who were more strict. And also, the fact that all three were three-star professors made them popular even outside of World Academy. Many of you might be confused about why we are here for the practical exam of the mage students, Arman said. The theory part was already done, and this was the last exam that was scheduled, and after that was the midterm examination, where all the hunter teams will move together. As you all already know, as a mage, the most important thing is to remain calm while casting your spells, Arman said as he looked at the more than 100 students before him. But a dungeon is a place where even the experienced and veteran might lose their composure, Arman said. We have changed how we test you guys from now on, Arman announced as many eyes looked at him. Unlike dummies, now you will cast spells at real monsters, Arman said, pointing his hand to his right. With the movement of his hand, the wall was removed, and a teleportation gate appeared, along with a big screen that showed a room with multiple monsters captured from the Lost Lands. And those that escaped after a dungeon break. Let me remind you, even though they are chained, they are well within the attacking range, and I want you guys to defeat the monsters or injure them enough, Arman said as he pointed at the monsters that were desperately trying to escape. The simple sight scared many students as some of them only moved behind a cover of someone and cast spells from a safe distance. Ads by Pub Future. First, overcome the fear induced by the bloodlust of these monsters, Arman reminded everyone, as it was a crucial step. He knew that the students were majors, and they were the ones that were often not on the front line, and this meant some of them had never felt a monster's bloodlust from close. Unlike weapon masters who would face these monsters closely, mages would support or attack from a distance, and that sometimes became their weakness growing stronger. Such fears were hard to remove as you grew with them. We will call you guys one by one, and you will choose a monster from the ones we give you, Arman announced as he looked at Elsa. And remember, those that defeat the monsters will receive much better grades than those that only injure them, Elsa said with a smile. Some of them were nervous, but this was not the first time they would encounter a monster. First is Elena Rothschild. Dahlia called Elena first as everyone looked at the beautiful girl standing up with elegance as she walked down towards the center of the stadium. D rank. Elsa noticed Elena had reached D rank. These are three monsters, all of them are early D rank monsters. Dahlia gave her a choice. I will choose the third one. Elena chose the beast-type monster as she entered the teleportation gate, and she appeared in front of the chained monster and people standing around to make sure any mishap didn't happen. Let's see the future Archmage candidate. Elsa looked forward to Elena's performance. She was the only student in the World Academy with an affinity for all the basic elements. And all of them were extremely strong affinities apart from the black element, which was on the weaker side. Growl. The beast howled as it sensed the presence of a being of similar strength. It had 2 eyes, 4 horns, and wide teeth, twice the size of Elena. Its claws were sharp enough to cut any A+ rank hunter in half, and it was an extremely dangerous beast. Bind of Great Earth. Elena started her first spell as a stone from the ground emerged, trying to capture the beast. Blade of Wind. Fire stand above all. Cyclone. Elena dual casted as she used her spells freely, and her combination was extremely good. Binding her target and using a wind spell to block the escape path. Lastly, she used a tier 2 spell that created a fire vortex. Her chants were so quick that before the beast could react, it was caught up in the wind blade that made severe cuts on its body. But what came next surprised many as a huge fire vortex engulfed and burnt the beast to death. Elena stepped back and returned to the teleportation gate. She arrived back at the stadium as she saw multiple students clapping at her performance. "Good job, Elena Rothschild. You may go back to your seat," Elsa said with a smile. "Thank you, Professor," Elena said as she returned to her seat. Elsa was glad that Elena gave such a nice performance as it made others after her think before choosing the monsters and the spells they needed to perform. Elena had set the bar with her performance, and many students that came after couldn't exceed that bar. Most students chose an A-rank beast because none were D-rank. Not half bad, Elsa thought as she looked at the students' performance. Some failed, but others kept calm and injured the monsters. Some even managed to kill them, but their execution of spells was poor, which affected their grading. But Elsa knew these people had just started learning about spells, so their growth was still quite good. "Why is this monster still alive?" some shouted with frustration as they had difficulty defeating the monster. Not all of them picked an excellent choice of monsters, either. Everything was a test, and currently, the option Elsa was giving was also one of them. Sometimes students were too focused on the monster's strength that they forgot what they had studied about them. Eva Williams, Dahlia called out the next name as she graded the previous student. "Good luck," Elena cheered Eva as she went to the stadium. "Pick your choice," Elsa said, and Eva also picked an early D-rank beast. Unlike Elena, who had reached D rank 2 weeks ago, a week after Kevin, Eva was still an A+ rank mage. "Are you sure about your choice?" Elsa asked, and Eva nodded back at her. Elena kept smiling because she knew that Eva was not like other mages. Her special magic, which revolved around barriers, allowed her to fight monsters of a higher rank than her. Elena only chose an early D rank to display a perfect performance, but Eva was just here to defeat the beast. It was a similar beast to the one Elena had hunted. Eva raised her hand as the beast immediately rushed at her. "Barrier magic, blades," Eva chanted the spell while a big barrier appeared between the beast and her, stopping it from moving further. And then, a set of invisible blades appeared around her that only she could control. Contemporary romance. Die. Eva focused on the small but powerful blades that appeared from constructing small barriers. It cut the beast multiple times, as Eva made 2 walls like a barrier and trapped it in its place. Right now, she was fighting alone, so she didn't have to consider others and could freely use her magic. "It's done," Eva said as she looked at various blades penetrating the beast's skin. She took a deep breath as she had used a lot of mana to care for the beast of a higher rank than her. Her performance shocked many people, but most were just too astonished to see her special barrier magic. "We can't see the barriers she makes," some of the students thought as they witnessed the might of the genius prodigy of the Williams family. After talking to Elsa, Eva returned to her seat, where Elena high-fived her and congratulated her on her victory. As both of them were laughing, the next name was called, and it was the Princess of Halcyon. "Licia Halcyon, you are next," Armand said as he looked at the black-haired girl with golden eyes. Licia stood up, drawing many eyes as she approached Elsa. "I will also choose early D rank," Licia decided, picking a monster similar to Elena's. She was the rank 5 student, above Elena, who was rank 6. Up until now, aside from Eva, none of the students had come close to Elena, so many were expecting something interesting. "Let's see the famous Princess of Halcyon," Elena said, staring at the screen. Eva glanced at Elena's face and merely shook her head. She knew that Elena took great pride in her mage abilities and aspired to be an exemplary mage. Elena watched as Licia stood before a giant monster, massive in both body and arms. But the monster lacked eyes. Instead, it had extraordinarily large ears and a keen sense of awareness, sensing Licia the moment she entered the room. "Varg!" the monster bellowed, moving in Licia's direction. "Mana barrier," Licia deployed a protective barrier around herself while simultaneously casting another spell. Firestorm. Licia summoned a storm of fire, a tier 2 spell. Her spell usage was on par with Elena, and her calmness in the face of a massive monster was admirable. Contemporary romance. Elsa smiled as she observed the princess of Helicon effortlessly controlling the flames while chanting another spell. Licia had affinities with fire and black elements. Seeing her control over the fire element, Elsa was also impressed. The firestorm Licia employed was among the more difficult tier 2 spells, in terms of a mage's control over it. While anyone could cast it, controlling the flame in such a precise manner was quite impressive. Shadow Pierce. Licia cast, and a sharp pole emerged from the monster's shadow, piercing its heart and killing it. Upon confirming the beast's death, Licia turned towards the teleportation gate to exit the room. Clap clap. Numerous students applauded Licia's performance, and Elsa offered her congratulations as well. Licia returned to her seat, and the test resumed. One by one, students descended to face a monster. Nothing too special about them, Arman commented, grading the student who had just returned, his hands trembling. The choice of monsters and beasts with high bloodlust was intentional, meant to provoke fear among the students. Ads by Pub Future. Overcoming such fear and hesitation was a must for a hunter. Amelia Greville. Arman announced the next name. Elena and Eva turned their gaze to Amelia, who walked down to the center and chose a monster for herself. Asher watched Amelia, who chose an A+ rank monster. She was currently at A+ rank but was on the verge of advancing to D rank. Currently, due to Asher's intervention, the Kalwas Gala was postponed and the midterm examination was conducted 2 months earlier than in his previous life. Usually, the World Academy would delay the midterm examination to ensure it didn't coincide with the start of the Kalwas Gala. Go ahead, Elsa told Amelia, who then entered the room. Elsa observed Amelia, who had a rare talent. She was an augmenta, not a normal mage. This meant she was one of the few who could cast spells that amplified the strength of their allies. Augmenters were highly coveted in any hunter teams as they were the most desirable support one could ask for. Asher noticed Amelia begin to chant augmenting spells on herself, significantly increasing her power. Her crimson-red eyes focused on the chained monster in front of her, a creature with multiple horns and eyes locked onto their prey. The monster became agitated as it sensed Amelia's mana, and it dashed towards her. Crescent Strike of the Wind, Amelia chanted, silently casting augmentation magic on herself. Upon finishing her chant, a wind blade appeared and decapitated the monster in an instant. Maintaining her composure, she turned to exit the teleportation gate. Internally, however, she was pleased with the results. Despite their supportive role, augmenters were far from weak. Good job, Amelia, Elsa congratulated Amelia, who acknowledged her with a nod. You can go back, Elsa instructed as she looked at Arman, who had finished writing Amelia's score. With not many students left, the next one Arman called was Alyssa, who was sitting a bit distant from Asher. She navigated her wheelchair to the center and looked at Elsa. So, what monster do you want to choose? Elsa offered Alyssa multiple options. I will choose a mid-D rank beast, Alyssa replied, meeting Elsa's gaze. Are you sure? Elsa asked again. Elsa sensed that Alyssa was nearing mid-D rank, which showcased her talent. However, she also knew that all of it might be in vain as Alyssa wasn't cut out for the lofty ambitions many hunters possessed. Merely looking at Alyssa's condition, one might question her capability to fight. Yes, Alyssa responded, her dull eyes fixed on Elsa. Okay, you can enter, Elsa permitted, tapping her ID bracelet. The teleportation gate lit up, and Alyssa entered the room. Before her stood a mid-D rank beast. The beast's eyes gleamed as it eyed Alyssa, who was hovering in the air. Can she even beat that? One of the boys asked. Let's hope she fails. Nobody wants to see her win, one of them replied with a look of irritation. Alyssa regarded the beast, which was pacing its territory, ready to attack her. It was a cautious beast, which made it even harder to kill. But not for Alyssa. This much should be enough, Alyssa thought, flaring her mana, which alerted the beast. Growl. The beast growled, trying to leap at her. Asher watched Alyssa, knowing that in her current state, she could defeat a C-rank monster. Halt, Alyssa murmured, raising her hands. Wait, why did the beast stop? Some students watching the screen voiced their confusion. However, Elsa and the other professors and staff guessed that Alyssa had employed her gravity magic to freeze the beast in place. Halting a mid-D rank beast while being a D rank was noteworthy. Descent of Ice Lance, Alyssa combined her two spells to create new ice spears which, aided by the heavy gravity surrounding the beast, fell and killed it. Many students silently watched the screen, but no one applauded. They were surprised to see Alyssa easily kill a mid-D rank beast, one that no one had dared to challenge until now. But unlike the previous students, none of them applauded after her performance. Elsa noticed this, as did the other two professors, but they couldn't compel the students to cheer for someone they disliked. Alyssa's situation was complicated enough that even the professors didn't want to get involved. Unsurprisingly, Alyssa hadn't expected any cheering directed at her. Out of the corner of her eyes, she spotted Elena and Eva watching her. But she didn't react to them. She was careful not to appear too strong, but she didn't want it to lose to others as well. Alyssa used her wheelchair to return to her spot, which was mostly empty as no one was sitting around her. Elsa continued calling the remaining students to choose what monsters they wanted to fight against. Die! One boy shouted, using almost all his mana to kill the beast. Why is it so hard? Another girl reacted similarly. Not all of them were having an easy time defeating the monsters. Then there was Gavin, who didn't perform too well, especially when he noticed Ash's gaze on him. Last one, huh? Elsa said, looking at the list of students who were left. Asher Greville, it's now your turn, Elsa called out. Asher rose from his seat and walked forward, standing before Elsa. Now, choose the monster you wish to fight, Elsa said as she looked at Asher. Asher looked at the various D+ rank monsters listed on the hologram that Elsa had shown him. I will choose a mid-C rank monster, Asher declared, looking at Elsa. C rank. Professor Dahlia spoke up. Is that a problem? Asher inquired, turning his gaze to Professor Dahlia. Remember, although we consider the ranks of the monsters, if you fail to kill it, you won't score well on this test, Dahlia clarified. It wouldn't matter if Asher chose a C rank monster if he couldn't defeat it. It's fine, Asher replied, returning his attention to Elsa. Sigh. Do as you wish, Elsa retorted, adjusting the list and selecting the monsters designated for second-year students. You may enter now, Elsa directed as she adjusted the coordinates to the room where a mid-C rank monster was held. C rank. Is he really challenging a C rank monster? But he did defeat Blake Cranston. He was using a sword back then. Yeah. Do you think C rank monsters are a joke? All the students began whispering among themselves. The purpose of this test was to gauge the students' progress as majors. However, every time Asher fought someone, he always used a sword. Even with a sword, this is a fight against a monster, not a spa, Elena remarked, peering at the screen. A massive monster, chained to the wall with 3 large horns and claws at the ends of its hands, came into view. Seeing the size of the monster, they could gauge how powerful it was. He's overestimating himself when he isn't even a mage, Elena commented, visibly annoyed. She felt her pride had been wounded when Asher chose the mage course over sword arts. It was clear that many, including her, felt mocked but could still not outperform Asher in all the classes, fueling their frustration even more. Asher noticed the unrest among the students as he stepped into the teleportation gate. Within seconds, all their thoughts and attention were now focused on him. Upon entering the teleportation gate, he saw a monster half the size of the boss of a C-rank dungeon, a peak C-rank boss monster. Unlike the last time he had to use his most potent ability, time dilation wasn't necessary now. Asher stood with his hands at his sides, and it was obvious that he couldn't use his sword now. Let's try the magic I learned, Asher contemplated, visualizing all the spells he had formulated in his head. Adds by Pub Future. He had requested this monster because he wanted to test the spells he had learned from the restricted section of the Great Library. The monster was about to roar when it felt a terrifying sensation coming from Asher. It was in the middle of charging toward Asher, but it stepped back instead. The monster's instinct didn't register this fear as emanating from Asher but rather from the entity near Asher. Riffer wishes to devour the monster. Asher noticed the notification pop up in front of him. Not now, Asher dismissed it. And the monster felt the sensation of fear disappear. Did the monster step back? One of the students queried. The professors, the staff, and the students were all confused by the monster's reaction. But in the next moment, the monster let out a deafening roar. Wurg! The monster slammed its fist on the ground, its eyes glowing blue. It charged towards Asher, who remained motionless. What is he trying to do? One of the staff members inquired. They noticed that Asher wasn't chanting any spell. Elsa and Dahlia noticed this too, but Arman was scrutinizing Asher closely. As the monster's arm extended to seize Asher, black chains materialized out of thin air, restraining its arm. The monster realized its hand was trapped and opened its jaws, revealing sharp teeth. But in the next moment, more and more chains appeared, immobilizing the monster completely. What is that spell? Elsa asked Arman, who was equally perplexed how a single restricting spell confined a C-rank monster. Could it be because he learned from Lady Helena? Arman speculated. Yet, their eyes were glued to Asher, who started approaching the beast. This should suffice, Asher noted, his mana beginning to flare. Suddenly, the monster started screaming as the chains burrowed into its body. Is he strangling the monster with a restricting spell? One student remarked, looking shocked. In a matter of seconds, the C-rank monster was slain, its neck strangled and severed due to the tremendous pressure exerted by Asher's spell. Host has used rank C Shadow Bind. Host has used rank C Shadow Control. Host has gained 1500 Express. The monster's blood splattered, some landing on Asher's face and clothes. The staff around the room was stunned by the sight unfolding before them. Is that really a first-year student? One of them questioned as they watched Asher exit through the teleportation gate. It's good enough, Asher observed, evaluating the damage his spells had caused after using the method that Lucas had utilized in his previous life. He noted that the destruction he had inflicted was not on the level of what Lucas, a pure mage, could achieve. Lucas's bloodline ability perfectly complemented his method, making replicating the exact result impossible for anyone other than him. But doing this much was already impressive because Asher didn't have the same bloodline ability as Lucas. Elena clenched her fist as she witnessed Asher's performance. It was challenging to watch a non-mage outperform every single one of them. Could it be because of the bloodline ability that all Grevils have? Eva wondered aloud. Perhaps, Elena responded, contemporary romance. Professor Arman, could you replicate something like this? Elsa queried Arman. No, I would have to use a higher tier spell to emulate that result, Arman replied truthfully. He didn't chant, so it was a silent cast as well, Dahlia commented as she concluded grading Asher. Do you think he will disclose the spell he used? Elsa inquired with a smile. Probably not, Arman responded, suspecting that Asher was using a spell Helena had taught him. They were unaware, however, that Asher was using different fundamentals in spell construction. He could only achieve this result because he still possessed the mana flow skill, allowing such precise control over mana. Elsa watched Asher emerge into the stadium, half his face smeared with monster blood. The sight of his indifferent crimson-red eyes and blood-covered face made many students uneasy, but they applauded nonetheless. Unlike Alyssa, whom they could openly mock without repercussions, Asher was an entirely different matter. Seeing his talent, more people wished to curry favor rather than create enmity. Clean, Dahlia enchanted the water-based spell, removing the monster's blood from Asher's body. "Do you mind sharing the spell you used?" Elsa requested, not hiding her intentions. "You can find them in the restricted section," Asher responded. Are you already delving into those lengthy books?" Elsa asked. "You can go back now," Elsa directed, and Asher returned to sit beside Amelia. "Your performance was commendable," Amelia said to Asher, her gaze fixed forward. She remained silent after that, although she felt a touch of discomfort, acting normally around Asher. "Okay," Asher replied, focusing on the stadium's center. "And this concludes the test, but we still have one more announcement for all of you," Elsa said, looking at all the students present. "It's about the final and most important part of the midterm examination," Elsa continued, capturing everyone's attention. "For most, it will be dungeon exploration, but for two teams with rankers among them, we have chosen a different test," Elsa revealed. "While the other teams will also experience the changes we've implemented, these two teams will face a different test to increase the difficulty level. So, prepare accordingly," Elsa concluded without providing further information, leaving many in suspense. "We can't really tell you more than this, so make sure you relay this information to your teammates and friends," Elsa said. Everyone began standing up, and Asher and Amelia did as well. "You can go back. I'm going to train with Damien," Amelia said, turning to leave. Asher headed towards the exit as well, but they each took a different path. Amelia was on her way to meet Damien on the ground floor of the Ranker's dorm, and she was thinking about Alyssa's performance. "She is strong," Amelia muttered. Of everyone present there, only Amelia's mind lingered on Alyssa's performance. The reason for this was their team meeting, where Alyssa had also been present. Throughout the entire meeting, Alyssa had barely responded to anyone. Most of the time, it was Vanessa who asked her things. Back then, Amelia had thought that perhaps it was Alyssa's background or her scars that made her behave in such a manner. But she hadn't thought that Alyssa was that strong. "Her elemental combination is powerful," Amelia muttered. She remembered asking what elements Alyssa felt comfortable using. Contemporary romance. Alyssa's response was just ice element and gravity magic, which surprised others. Most people with a space element affinity would often choose to learn other elements instead. This caused Amelia to be a bit skeptical about Alyssa's potential. "It's only until this exam, so it will be fine," Amelia recalled what Sylvie had told her when they arrived at the World Academy. "Make sure that Asher stays away from that girl," Sylvie instructed Amelia. "But Mom, why do you think he will listen to me?" "You should ask Damien instead," Amelia retorted, hugging her pillow. It was night time, and Sylvie was spending some time with Amelia, who would soon depart for the World Academy. Unlike Asher, she hadn't seen her daughter much as Amelia was studying outside of Somaria. "I asked him first, before you," Sylvie said, struggling to hold back her laughter. "Mom, don't make fun of me," Amelia exclaimed, throwing her pillow. "Okay, sweetie. But listen, I don't want any harm to come to your reputations, okay?" Sylvie said as she used her mana to place the pillow back on the bed. They talked a lot more, and Sylvie didn't bring up the topic again. Ads by Pub Future. "Yeah, it's better to have her on our team," Amelia muttered, remembering the way Alyssa fought in the representative tournament. Alyssa didn't care about her own well-being, overusing her mana despite having a weak body. There was a reason most students, even seniors, didn't challenge Alyssa to a duel. Many people began calling her crazy due to her fighting style. They didn't want to spar or duel with such a person. "I should train harder," Amelia said to herself. She felt that her progress had slowed down slightly. This insecurity arose from the monstrous talent that Asher exhibited. The rankings of everyone besides the top 3 were quite close, but the difference of all the rankers from the rank 1 was huge. This was the last test before the final part of the midterm examination, and many students were training intensively for it. A similar atmosphere pervaded all 3 years, except for the 4th year, which didn't have any sort of examination. Apart from the final exam, they had no exams until the end of the year. Asher was on his way to the Great Library to learn more about other spells that could assist him. Originally, he had planned to use this time to enhance his swordsmanship, but seeing that his progress was advancing with his increased knowledge about mage art, he decided to spend his time in the library. Since the month was about to end, it made more sense for him to spend his time reading those books. Upon entering the Great Library, he noticed that it wasn't crowded with students. Most of them were busy training for the exams. Even mage course students would spend this time training, as learning from books was a lengthy process. Not everyone was like Asher, capable of reading a book and understanding the meaning and thoughts behind it. And if they did, they needed to spend a significant amount of time restructuring the spell to suit them. "You're back again," the old man outside the restricted section asked. "Is there a problem?" Asher asked. "Not really, but there will be a few professors inside, so you might run into them," he reminded Asher, as this was a time when most professors had some extra time to continue their research. "I don't mind," Asher replied as he went inside. The section he was intending to visit probably wouldn't have any professors in it anyway. He planned to read some books in the Space Element section of the restricted area of the Great Library. This was the only place that housed spells deemed too dangerous or forbidden because they could harm the caster. However, considering that some professors might want to research them, the World Academy placed such books in the restricted section. Upon entering the Space Elements section, Asher noticed that there weren't many books there. Unlike the previous sections he visited, this one didn't have half the number of books. "I don't need to read this," Asher noted, seeing that many books were about the principles of the teleportation gate. He didn't want to read those books. This should be fine for now, Asher decided, picking up 2 books related to his area of interest. Though his movement art was quite fast, Asher wanted to learn the Tier 2 blink spell to expand his combat abilities. "I should find that spell in these books," Asher mused, glancing at the titles of the books. Rather than books, they were stored research papers from a deceased space element mage who had researched these spells. Most of the work present here was like these 2 books. Asher turned the pages, going through the theories and spells mentioned in the books. Each of those spells was complex, and even the author mentioned how harmful using them could be. Despite knowing that they would die in the process of their research, space mages still proceeded. Host's magic mastery is increasing. A single notification popped up as Asher continued reading through the pages for hours on end. After 30 hours, Asher was still engrossed in those 2 books. In his mind, he was reconstructing those spells to suit him. But the mana usage of those spells was quite high. Even for the current him, executing more than 10 Tier 2 blink spells would have cost more than half of his mana. This was also considering that his sword art required a significant amount of mana as well, as did his aura. Ping! Asher stopped reading as he received a notification on his ID bracelet. Less than announcement. First-year students, gather your teams and appear at the portal gate assigned to your team the day after tomorrow. Greater than. This should be enough, Asher said, closing the books and standing up. Walking back to the place from where he had picked the books, he checked his ID bracelet for any additional notifications. Aside from frequent messages from Damien, he hadn't received any news from Tom in the past couple of days. They should have started the mission, Asher recalled Tom's last message. Asher decided to leave the Great Library and return to the Ranker's dorm. He had studied enough, so he was planning to spend the rest of his time training his mana. Multiple groups of students, clad in armor and holding their weapon of choice, stood before the teleportation gate. "Whoa, look at them," one guy said, capturing the attention of many students. "So all these rankers are on one team. I envy them," another guy said. Just then, Kevin's team was entering. Everyone on the team was a ranker, with the exception of Rear Adler. Their allure attracted considerable attention from the students. However, seeing their competition, some students grew even more anxious. This examination was designed to grade the hunter teams. Some of them were really striving to score well, and having half the rankers on one team stirred a bit of envy. Usually, only 2 or at most 3 rankers would be on a team, as previous midterms took place in teams of 4. But this time, World Academy increased the team limit from 4 to 10. This led some students to lose hope, as they stood no chance of winning against the 2 teams comprising all the rankers. Reliance on others' abilities to win wasn't ideal, but they couldn't help feeling that the top 2 spots were already decided. "The professors aren't here yet?" Rhea asked, scanning the area. It was 7 a.m., and all the first-year students were instructed to assemble before this time. But only students had gathered here with their teams. Around 130 to 140 teams had formed. Almost all the teams were balanced, except for a few ready for the increased difficulty of having top-ranking students on their teams. "Attention students, we'll start soon, so if your teammate hasn't arrived yet, gather them immediately," a professor announced. Some people began using their ID bracelets to hastily call their tardy teammates. At another portal gate, Asher's team stood, with Dahlia ensuring that everyone on her given list was present. "It was true, that girl is indeed on their team," some students whispered among themselves. Seeing Alyssa confirmed the rumors, but no one dared to speak too loudly. "But did he really outperform all the majors?" one guy asked his mage teammate. "Yeah, and it was AC rank monster as well," his teammate replied with a nod. "Ads by Pub Future. But isn't he a swordsman?" a girl in their team asked. "Yeah, he was supposed to be a sword user, but I don't even know at this point," their team leader replied. Each hunter team had a team leader responsible for guiding them in the test and managing the team. "Let's just hope we don't have to face them," he said. "I don't think we'll directly compete with other teams, so we'll be fine," the girl replied. "Yeah, she's right. Some of the professors hinted that it'll be a dungeon-based test," the mage of their team chimed in. "Then our composition should work," the team leader responded. Most hunter teams adhered to the pattern of having a few mages and weapon users for protection. Each team consisted of 6 to 8 students, with some having even 9 or 10, but most didn't. Having too many people on their teams meant that their grades would decrease, so most teams opted not to have 9 or 10 students. "Listen carefully, apart from this team, all of you will be competing in the dungeons we have prepared for you," Dahlia announced, pointing to Asher's team. "We'll take you to the dungeons, and you have 7 days to clear them. If you can't do it, you will fail this exam." Dahlia's words made some students nervous. "So there will be no one following us like last time," one of them muttered. Everyone understood that this time they wouldn't receive any external help. But Dahlia didn't mention that 2 instructors were told to go inside the dungeon much earlier than the students to prevent the situation that occurred with Asher and Alyssa. Farnas didn't want to take any chances now, so he personally chose all of them, who were rank hunters that could ensure the safety of the students while maintaining the fairness of the test. "So we're not going with them?" Damien asked, raising his hand. Dahlia looked at Asher's team. "No. I'll take you to the place where your test will be held separately," Dahlia said. "Due to the fact that 2 teams have all the rankers, we've given them a much higher difficulty than all of you," Dahlia mentioned to all the students, in case anyone thought it was unfair that they were not going inside a dungeon. What kind of test will they go through? Some students wondered, whispering among themselves. Everyone, exit through that portal in the order your team is called, Dahlia commanded, eager not to waste time on trivial matters. Teams began moving towards the portal, entering as their names were called. As for you guys, we've prepared a maze-type dungeon with special traps. You need to compete with the other team traversing the same dungeon, Dahlia said, approaching where Asher and his team stood. Maze dungeon? Vanessa asked, puzzled. It's a dungeon with multiple starting points, Amelia replied, having heard about it. Exactly, consider it as a race, but we've altered the structure of the dungeon by placing monsters that we want you to compete against, Dahlia explained. Also, there will be numerous traps we've placed to slow you down, Dahlia added. So what's the winning condition? Asher asked. You need to reach the center where there will be 2 medallions. Take one and exit the dungeon, then race against the other team to reach the final destination and place the medallion on the final spot, Dahlia explained. We've anticipated that both your teams will place in the top 2 ranks, so we'll determine the positions with this test, Dahlia mentioned, not fully explaining the difficulties they would face. Asher realized they intended for them to compete with Kevin Whiteheart's team, but this still didn't make sense as even in a race, Asher could help them win by clearing all the monsters himself. Are the monsters we'll face different? Asher asked. Dahlia raised her eyebrows, slightly surprised that Asher had already grasped the structure of the exam. Yes, but it's done to ensure that you guys take this test as a team, Dahlia replied. She didn't mention the traps, Asher thought to himself. He figured that the traps they would encounter would also differ from what Kevin's team would face. The fact that they'd placed external monsters indicated they'd carefully selected monsters that would force them to act as a team. The same was true for Kevin's team, who were receiving a similar explanation from another professor. Maze-type dungeons were different from regular dungeons. The center of the dungeon was always the boss room, and every 5 minutes, the starting point would shift to one of the 4 edges. This was the basic rule followed in every maze-type dungeon. Is the medallion a compass? Asher asked one final question. Dahlia smiled, realizing Asher understood the true nature of the test. It didn't matter if they reached the center first, the real test was outside the dungeon. Yes, and Professor Neiman is present there, so he'll explain the rules to you guys there. Now, enter the portal, Dahlia instructed, glancing behind. All the teams had entered, so the place had become empty. Now, good luck, Dahlia said. Asher turned towards the portal, while the rest of the team remained silent. So what should we do? Damien asked. Should we change our formation? He asked Asher, who was leading them. Their previous formation was designed to clear a dungeon by killing monsters, but now the test was a bit different. No, we'll follow the same formation, Asher replied. Well, if you say so, Damien said, surprising the whole team with his casual interaction with Asher, contemporary romance. Even Sam was taken aback like the others on their team, seeing Damien talk so naturally with Asher. Only Amelia, who had known Damien from a young age, was aware that he was the only one who could talk to Asher so casually without feeling awkward. Most people, including Sam and Vanessa, found it difficult to interact with Asher, who always carried an indifferent look on his face. It was hard to know what he was thinking while his crimson-red eyes stared at you. This made most people avoid engaging in conversation with Asher since they couldn't discern his thoughts, given his lack of facial reactions. As they all arrived on the other side, they were greeted with the sight of a mountainous path inside a large forest. Is this fascia? Amelia asked, noticing the environment around them. Yes, welcome to fascia, Professor Neiman said, as Amelia turned to see a huge camp where the people of the World Academy were staying. And this is your test site, Neiman said, signaling a guy to come near him. This man will take you to the dungeon entrance, but before that, I need to explain the rules of this test, Neiman said with a smile on his face. As you know, The dungeon you will be entering will be a maze-type dungeon, Neiman explained. So both the teams are supposed to enter at an interval of 5 minutes each, contemporary. Romance. This was crucial because the dungeon's starting point would change every 5 minutes. Although the dungeon had 4 such starting points, only 2 teams were competing, so they didn't need to wait any longer than 5 minutes. The rules of this test are simple. Don't execute any lethal attacks on the opposing team, Neiman cautioned. You can fight them at any point in the test, but don't take the fight too far, he added, ensuring everyone understood his point. You can use all sorts of tricks, but none of you can leave the dungeon before you secure the medallion, which will be present in the boss room, Neiman explained. Can we use our artifacts? Damien asked, since his shield was an artifact. Yes, artifacts are allowed, Neiman replied. Remember, this is a test, so make sure to work as a team, Neiman advised. We will monitor all of your performances and grade you accordingly, he added. Wait, wouldn't the team that enters first have an advantage over the team that goes in second? Sam queried. Don't worry, we will give you tracking rings to ensure something like that doesn't happen, Neiman assured him. Any more questions? Neiman asked. They all shook their heads in response. Well, this old man will go and rest. Best of luck to you guys, Neiman said as he turned to leave. Follow me, I will take you to the dungeon. The staff member stepped forward after Neiman ended his conversation. On their way, except for Asher and Alyssa, all of them were observing the place they were in. Although they were told it was Fascia, they didn't know where in Fascia they were, and the course of the race could be affected by that information. I hope we are not in the south of Fascia, Sam expressed with a frown. Ads by Pub Future. Why south? Vanessa asked. Although there aren't any deserts in the south of Fascia, if this is the south, we need to be careful about the plants around us, Damien explained. Some of them are very poisonous, and the terrains house many small beasts that share these characteristics as well. Damien was aware of this because his brother Nate would always be engrossed in reading books that mentioned such things. By spending time with Nate in Soren, he had heard about these aspects numerous times. As they were following the staff member, Asher was walking at the end, with Alyssa ahead of him, using her wheelchair to navigate. The path to the dungeon had already been cleared by the World Academy, so Alyssa didn't have to use her magic to float. After a few minutes, they arrived in front of a large blue gate dungeon, where Kevin and his team were already waiting. Oh, they arrived before us, Damien remarked, observing Kevin's team. The tension in the air thickened when Kevin noticed Damien's mocking smirk. Sam observed Damien's behavior and began to understand the kind of person Damien Seymour was. Damien was always nice with Asher and Amelia, but most people who interacted with him found him infuriating. Is he trying to provoke them? Sam wondered. Although Damien was essentially good-natured, his mischievous streak often led others to believe he wasn't that decent. However, his reputation was still better than Asher's, who was avoided by almost every student in the World Academy. Even senior year students didn't want to get involved with him. Okay, everyone is gathered here, Xander said, scanning the crowd. I assume that you all already know the rules of this test, he continued. This is AC rank dungeon, but we have placed the monsters of our choice with various traps inside, so don't try to predict the monsters based on the environment inside the dungeon, Xander warned. Both team leaders, step forward, Xander commanded as Kevin and Asher walked to the front. They stood facing each other. Kevin Whiteheart's team will go first in 20 seconds from now, Xander declared, glancing at the timer on his wrist. Let's go, Elena commanded, striding towards the entrance of the dungeon. Eva followed her, while Rhea cast a glare at Asher's team. Matthew was the only one who didn't care about such theatrics. He merely needed to follow Leonard's orders and give his best to ensure their team won. He examined the amount of artifacts their team had and concluded that their chances of winning had significantly increased. Apart from Eva, who had already received the artifact that her brother Reese had left for her, everyone was given artifacts from Kevin's sister, Raylan Whiteheart. The spear that Kevin was holding was the same one he had won at the auction. Matthew didn't know about Asher and his team, but he knew that Sam was only using a ranked C spear, which he had purchased recently, and no other artifact. "Damn, they're trying so hard to win," Damien said in a voice loud enough to carry. "Look at all those rings," he added in a mocking tone. Amelia understood that Damien was trying to rile up their emotions before the match began, but she shook her head. "He is enjoying this too much," Amelia thought to herself. Though she was confident, she didn't want to underestimate the others before securing a win. Elena was about to retort, but they needed to enter the dungeon now. "Remember, you cannot move until the ring we gave you lights up," Xander instructed as he watched Kevin's team enter the dungeon. Kevin entered the dungeon, but he couldn't help but feel angry at Damien's mocking stare. "They will regret their words," Kevin muttered as he turned back to look at his team. His confidence came from the fact that more than half of his team had already reached D rank. Elena, Licia, and Matthew had reached D rank, with Kevin being the first to achieve it on his team. "So, are we following the same plan?" Licia asked, looking at Eva. "Yeah, this is a race, so we just need to reach the final position first." "It doesn't matter how," Eva replied with a smile. They started discussing their strategy while outside the dungeon. Asher and his team were still waiting for their turn to enter. Xander was talking with one of the instructors about the safety of the exam. This time, they had taken extra steps to ensure the exams occurred safely, without any incidents. They were unaware, but Xander and Neiman had control over all areas within a 20 kilometers radius of this dungeon, and security runes were placed to alert them if anything went awry. The rumors about Zephyr had also reached the World Academy, but they didn't care much about it as the elite families would handle it themselves. "It's time," Xander told Asher. "Enter with your team," he commanded as Asher stepped towards the dungeon entrance. The rest of them followed, casually strolling towards the dungeon gate. "The moment you enter, the test will begin, so don't waste any time or you will be left behind," Xander cautioned, watching as Asher and his team entered the dungeon. Xander floated above the ground, observing the course from a higher vantage point. He decided to wait there and supervise the test himself. He didn't need to worry about what was happening inside the dungeon as 4 professors were already there, monitoring the activities of the 2 teams. Communicating with the outside world from inside the dungeon was impossible, with only a few artifacts possessing such capabilities. So, 4 professors were sent inside the dungeon a lot earlier than the 2 teams, and they were going to grade the teams based on their performances. Inside the dungeon, Professor Neiman worked hard for this, Arman commented, looking at the projection in front of him. Neiman used various runes and connected them in a way that allowed all the professors to monitor the teams simultaneously. "Don't lose focus," Elsa reminded Arman. "But aren't these traps too difficult for the first years?" Another professor asked. "Well, given the talents we are dealing with, I think it's fine," a 4th professor replied. As the 4 professors conversed, Asher moved inside the straight path that led them deeper into the dungeon. "So they are monitoring us," Asher noticed various runes, thanks to his incredibly high mana sense. "Hungry," a voice echoed in Asher's head. "Don't worry, you will get your food," Asher mentally replied. It was the voice of Riffer. He had already confirmed that Riffer would be completely invisible if he used his perfect conceal ability, and he planned to use this dungeon to feed his beast. "Why is the lighting here so dim?" Vanessa complained as she stepped on a dead monster's skull. "It shouldn't be like this originally," Sam replied. "Maintain the formation, and stay behind me," Asher said, interrupting their conversation. He didn't want them to step out of line and stumble onto some rune formation that would trigger a trap. These guys are doing well for first years, the fourth professor said as he watched both teams. In Kevin's team, the one leading was Elena, followed closely by Kevin. Although not comparable to the Greville, the Rothschilds' bloodline ability made it easier for their descendants to accumulate and accept mana in their bodies. It was a bloodline that affected their affinities with mana instead of granting them control over mana. The Greville family was unique in having a bloodline that allowed a person to control mana as they wished. And due to this, Elena had the highest mana sense compared to the whole team. Kevin was the only person who could compete with her in terms of mana sense, but it required him to use his lightning element. So, instead of wasting his energy, Elena suggested she take the lead. The reason Asher and Elena were leading their teams was to avoid rune formations set in the dungeon. Unlike monsters, they didn't know what the rune formations would do to them. In this race, they needed to be more aware of the runes than the monsters they would face. And just like that, Asher's team began moving inside the dungeon. But they were maintaining their pace and not rushing toward the center. "Are you okay?" Vanessa whispered to Alyssa. "Yeah," Alyssa replied as she kept floating in the air. If her body had not been healed, Alyssa could only have maintained floating in the air for an hour, making her the worst teammate in dungeon exploration. But currently, her body was healed, so she could maintain floating for 6 to 7 hours. The only reason to stop would be the intense headache she would get as a side effect of using gravity magic. "I can't sense all the runes." Asher spread his mana sense to cover a lot of distance ahead of them. Did he do this knowing I am a Greville? Asher thought. "Stop for a second." Asher raised his hand as everyone halted. "Did something happen?" Damien asked, standing in the middle. Their formation was Asher and Sam at the front, while Amelia and Alyssa were in the center, with Vanessa holding the rear. "I need to check something." Asher picked up a bone of a dead monster that was nearby. "Is something wrong with this monster?" Sam asked. Ads by Pub Future. "Aren't these the monsters that World Academy's hunters hunted to clear this dungeon?" Damien said. "No," Asher replied. "There was no reason for the people who cleared this dungeon to leave the monsters nearby like this. Every monster was a valuable resource despite the abundance of dungeons present in this world. It wouldn't make sense that they would leave a dead monster corpse here. This monster doesn't belong to this dungeon," Asher said, his eyes staring further down the dimly lit path. "Really?" Amelia asked as she looked at the few dead monsters around them. Suddenly a thought clicked in her head. "Are these the monsters that they placed inside the dungeon?" Amelia asked. "But why are they dead?" Damien asked. "Fireball." Asher summoned a ball of fire as he lit up their surroundings even more. Currently, Amelia was casting the light ahead of them, but Asher's fireball illuminated the area even more. "Are these burn marks?" Amelia noticed the black stain on the walls. "These are the traps from the rune formations," Asher replied with an indifferent look. "What?" Damien and Sam exclaimed at the same time. "You mean?" Damien began, both he and Sam looking ahead into the dungeon with nervous expressions. "Isn't that too much for a trap, though?" Damien said, looking at the monster's corpse. "This doesn't make sense," Amelia spoke out. "Monsters would sense such a formation easily," she said, bringing their attention to a key piece of information they had forgotten. It was established that monsters could sense the mana from the runes, so they could actively avoid traps made from runes. This was also one of the reasons that made a runemaster much weaker in combat. Even if they made a trap, the monster would sense that and avoid it. "Not unless they masked the rune formation with another," Asher said as he concentrated on his mana sense. Suddenly mana flared around his eyes, making his crimson-red eyes glow. Alyssa could sense Asher's mana. "Don't they notice it?" she wondered as she saw that no one other than her reacted to Asher's mana sense. From the moment her body was healed, her mana sensitivity had increased significantly. She was even able to sense the minute differences in mana when people around her rank used spells. Did they figure it out so early? Arman said as he looked at Ash's team. It was one of the clues they had purposely set, and they wanted to see if the students were aware of it. Well, it's not like Professor Neiman placed any lethal traps for them, Elsa replied. But they would be out of the race if they get caught in those traps, the third professor said. That's on them. We can always treat them back to their best conditions, the fourth professor laughed. These guys, Arman thought. Both of them were respected professors who were 3-star, just like him and Elsa. But the difference was that they only taught 3rd and 4th year students. They were present here only to grade the two teams, as this kind of test was different from what World Academy did before. But he is sharp. Arman noticed that Asher was incredibly sharp for someone so strong. It was often seen that those gifted in talents as a hunter often neglected such crucial details. It was the experience they gained in their later years that helped them gain the eyes to notice such small details. Well, the first step to being a good hunter is studying your environment to gather knowledge about the enemies even before you face them, the fourth professor laughed as he said this. Let's focus on the test, Arman reminded both of the old men to concentrate on the test. What do you mean by mask? Damien asked as he crouched to touch the bones of the monster. Asher's eyes moved around as he sensed a faint feeling of mana around the corner of the wall they were about to pass through. He immediately threw the bone toward the wall, creating enough pressure to activate a rune hidden behind it. Boom! An explosion occurred in front of them as Amelia instantly cast a mana barrier to protect them from the flames. Warn us before doing something like this, Amelia said as she looked at Asher. Asher didn't look back, but he started walking toward the spot where the explosion had occurred. Sam, who was beside Asher, had just witnessed an explosion happen in front of him. If not for Amelia's mana barrier, he would have had to use his aura to defend himself at the last second. Even then, he was sure that due to his lack of awareness, he would have gotten a few burns. This would have been enough to stop my mana sense if it wasn't rank A, Asher thought as he looked at the masking runes that were visible to him. It was something that only high-level runemasters could do, but masking the runes was indeed possible. Although it reduced the effect of the original rune that was masked, it was mainly used for security measures against hunters below rank A. It will be difficult to spot them in the middle of a fight. Asher could see that Neiman had used the special walls of this dungeon to increase the masking of the runes. These walls were special as they would slowly absorb the mana around them, making the rune hidden behind the wall. On top of that, it was masked, so unless the wall was impacted by enough pressure, the runes would not activate. Let's go, Asher said as he looked behind him. But as they were moving through the narrow, dim path, Asher could sense the presence of many rank D monsters that were ahead of them. Get ready to fight, Asher told them as he flared his mana. As he said that, all of them became alert as their relaxed eyes turned sharp, contemporary romance. As they moved through the path, they arrived at an open area that was quite large. Looking around, they saw various D-rank monsters. Fire wolves. Amelia recognized the beasts. These were special wolf monsters that had a blue flame around their tails, and their eyes shone blue in the dim lighting. You guys fight them, Asher said as he looked at another couple of D-rank monsters lurking in the dungeon's shadows. Don't show your presence, Asher reminded his beast. He had noticed it last time, but his strange beast somehow made a C-rank monster step back in fear. At the time, it happened because Riffer faintly showed his presence as it looked at the mid-C rank monster as its food. But this time, he didn't want the monsters to run away, as it would only waste their time if the monsters avoided them. Okay, Damien replied as he raised his shield. There are a total of 10 fire wolves, Sam alerted them as he noticed the enraged wolves looking at them as they growled. He didn't know why Asher had told them to deal with the fire wolves alone, but he knew that he needed to kill enough monsters to increase his individual scores. That was what was on everyone's mind. Asher had dashed away using his movement technique, but the wolves ignored him, as their attention was focused on the large group of humans before them. Meanwhile, Kevin's team also encountered their first monster, but it was only 7 fire wolves with no other monsters present. Contemporary romance. It was clear that the difficulty level for Asher and Kevin's team was different, and it had been arranged to make the dungeon equally challenging for both of them. "I will handle the fire wolves," Kevin said as he raised his spear. Having reached D rank, he wanted to test his strength against a monster, so he took the lead. Matthew also raised his sword, but, knowing Kevin, he didn't intervene in the fight. Instead, he stuck to the role of defending the mages from a sudden attack. Chain of Depth, Licia used a restricting spell while Eva made a barrier towards their back. Elena used a water spell to amplify the effect of Kevin's lightning element. In a few minutes, Kevin used his aura to defeat multiple fire wolves while Rhea and Matthew managed to kill one themselves. Should I kill more? Matthew wasn't sure. He could have participated and killed more, but Kevin was the team leader, and if there was one thing that Matthew had learned growing up, it was easy to hurt the egos of those with higher standings in society. Unlike Asher, who had an unapproachable aura, Matthew found people like Elena, Kevin, and Leonard much harder to deal with. Although he was talented enough to be a rank 4 student, he was still a person with no background. The last thing he wanted was to make things harder for himself while studying at World Academy. Even right now, his task was to guard Licia, who had taken on the role of casting restricting spells when they were dealing with monsters, and that's why he was sticking to his role. But unlike their team, Asher's team was actively fighting the fire wolves as they had tend to deal with. While Sam and Damien dealt with 5 fire wolves, Alyssa dealt with the others alone. Ice Lance, Alyssa called, floating in the air. Adds by Pub Future. Her abilities are impressive. Sam noticed the Ice Lance falling on one of the fire wolves and instantly killing it. He had thought that the only monster on their team was Asher, but it seemed that Alyssa was someone to watch out for as well. Vanessa dashed toward the wolves that were startled by Alyssa's attack. But except for one, the fire wolves dodged Alyssa's attack. Should I increase the force? Alyssa noticed that the fire wolves were incredibly agile. But she didn't want to show too much during this examination. She wasn't too worried about using her abilities as she knew that there was someone on their team who could easily overshadow her. She looked at Asher, who was walking towards the darker area of the dungeon, as she noticed a couple of beasts around that direction. She had also sensed the monsters, but it was only after she saw Asher walking in that direction that she realized once again how sharp Asher's senses were. This should be enough. Asher noticed the pair of shining blue eyes appearing through the darkness. He had approached the area, and right now, all the professors were wondering how he was going to deal with the monster ahead of him. Asher took out his sword as he saw a unique type of monster coming toward him. A crystal leer, a monster that was twice the size of a human with crystal-like armor all over its body. They had holes around their cheeks that were used to create a fog-like mist that disrupted the vision of others. Their eyes were completely blue as they shined through the darkness they were lurking in. There were 3 crystal leers, and they were a monster that was extremely hard to deal with without a team. Due to their crystal-like armor, it was hard to damage them, but their strange ability to create a mist-like fog and trap their prey inside was their main threat. Only they could see inside the fog, so it was suggested that a group of crystal leers should always be fought with a team, not alone if you couldn't overpower them. Professor Erman, make sure to help him if things go south, the 4th professor said as all of them were watching Asher. Although they found Asher's approach to this problem wrong, they needed to see if he could handle the situation he had created. Suddenly a fog appeared all around Asher as he saw the crystal leers dash toward him. It would be hard for someone to see in that fog, but he didn't need to see them. Just by sensing the movement around him, even without his mana sense, Asher could counter all attacks directed at him. But this time, he wanted to use these monsters to feed them to River. And they were perfect as they somewhat interrupted the vision of the professors. Eat the first monster I kill, Asher raised his aura as it covered his sword. But unlike last time, his sword shined as it absorbed the aura of its owner. Vrag. The sound of the crystal's layers could be heard all around Asher, but he twisted his leg to his right. His sword moved incredibly fast as it sliced through a monster that was coming towards him from the right. Less than host has gained 100 express greater than. As the other two crystal layers sensed one of their own had been killed, they stopped attacking Asher immediately. This was another reason why crystal layers were difficult for hunters to deal with, because they would always try to attack from your blind spots. As Asher killed the first crystal layer, small crystals of armor dropped around him. He immediately used mere steps to jump out of the fog, and he could see the two monsters from above. He's good. The third professor praised Asher, but as their attention was on Asher, they failed to notice the hole that appeared around the chest of the monster. Asher noticed that his snake was feeding on the monster, so he immediately shifted the attention of the professors that might have been watching him as he used mere step in midair. One thing that mere step required was a platform for Asher to step on, and that seemed impossible until now. But Asher made a black platform using his rank C shadow control to dash towards the two monsters as his sword impaled through the opened mouth of one of the crystal layers. Less than host has gained 100 express greater than. Instead of stopping, Asher looked at the other crystal layer as blackish chains appeared out of nowhere, pinning the monster to the ground. Asher used his sword, coating it with his aura, and used swift strike to slice the monster in half. Less than host has gained 100 express greater than. The experience he gained was too low because he was already at C rank, and the monsters he was fighting were at D+ rank. And while Asher finished his fight, he looked at his team, who were dealing with the last two wolves. While he moved back, Kevin's team had already finished defeating the last fire wolf, as Eva created a barrier to negate the fire the wolf threw at them. Let's go. We should not waste any time, Elena said, looking at Kevin, who removed his spear from the dead wolf. He is strong, Matthew admitted as he looked at the 5 fire wolves that Kevin had defeated. Although Elena and Licia had assisted him, looking at Kevin's abilities, Matthew knew that Kevin was capable of killing them on his own as well. Their team is ahead because of the test's difficulty for both of them, the fourth professor said. It was something that we decided in the meeting. This way, we can see the potential of both teams, Arman replied to the fourth professor. They need to deal with more monsters until they reach the center of the maze, Elsa said as she looked at both teams that had passed through the first part of this dungeon. In total, there were 4 parts to this test, and the final part was in the center. They needed to deal with 2 more challenges that were in store for both teams. River has consumed a monster. However, it's not enough to increase his level, a higher rank monster is needed. Asher saw the notifications as he walked towards Damien, who was holding the wolf back while Sam and Vanessa were finishing the other. Overall, the passage is understandable, but there are some minor grammatical errors and redundancies that could be improved for clarity and fluency. Here is the proofread version. Die! Sam shouted as he propelled himself towards the fire wolf using his mana. His spear penetrated the D-rank monster's body, his attack amplified by the use of aura. As Sam turned to observe the fallen wolf, he noticed another. Severely wounded but still alive, lunging for his leg with its jaws wide open. Watch out, Damien shouted. But Vanessa, being closer to Sam, acted quickly, slashing off the wolf's head with her sword. Oh, thanks, Sam said, looking back to see Vanessa had saved him from a potentially serious injury. Don't lose focus, Vanessa warned him, turning towards Alyssa, who had already defeated 4 wolves single-handedly using her ice magic. She hadn't needed to utilize her gravity magic for anything other than levitation. My grading will drop because of this mistake, Sam thought, turning his attention back to the situation. He had made a mistake intentionally, wanting to avoid the spotlight of the rankers. Sam didn't want to draw Jack's attention if he somehow managed to make it into the rankers. Everyone knew that the midterms contributed heavily to the rankings, second only to the end-year exam, which was always a duel. Wait, what did you fight? Amelia asked Asher, noticing the spots of blue blood on his armor. You'll see them ahead. Let's go, Asher replied. All of them followed Asher and soon came across several crystal layers. Crystal layers, Amelia murmured, shocked. Seeing the 3 slain monsters, everyone turned to look at Asher, except Alyssa, who knew that Asher had defeated even stronger monsters before. Did she not know? Alyssa looked at Amelia's expression, puzzled. She had assumed that as his sister, Amelia would have known about Asher's bloodline ability that allowed him to face a C+ rank monster. But she was unaware that it was actually Asher's time dilation skill, not his bloodline ability, that had aided him. Asher stored the monster's remains in his spatial ring, not wanting to leave any trace of River. Be careful from here, Asher warned, sensing an abundance of rune traps ahead. Follow my steps, he instructed, his emotionless gaze fixed forward. They were navigating through the dungeon, which had begun to widen, but they maintained a straight line to avoid all the rune traps. Kevin's team, however, got caught in a few traps but managed to escape, thanks to Eva's barrier. Only Asher had such a high level of mana sense that he was able to dodge all the traps. Adds by Pub Future. How is he avoiding all the traps? The third professor wondered aloud. Some of them are hidden so perfectly that even I can't detect them, he admitted. This wasn't how they had planned the test to unfold. They wanted to assess the team's teamwork and their response to unexpected situations. Why aren't we encountering any monsters? Amelia wondered aloud. Perhaps we're on the right path, Damien replied, contemporary romance. The maze-type dungeon had many paths, and right now, Asher was leading them down the most difficult but shortest path. His reason was simple. He didn't want to waste too much time fighting ordinary monsters. Suddenly, an explosion echoed throughout the dungeon, causing them all to stop in their tracks. Did a monster trigger a trap? Damien speculated. Asher extended his mana sense but didn't detect any monster near the triggered trap. Are they increasing the difficulty for us? He wondered. Let's see how you react to this, the fourth professor mused, triggering a trap deliberately. The noise attracted nearby monsters. We're about to face a horde of monsters, Asher informed the group, drawing his sword. A group of monsters were racing towards the noise, leaving them with no option but to fight. We need to pick up the pace, Asher stated, flaring his mana. Noticing this, the others did the same. I'm ready. Damien stepped up to stand just behind Asher, with Sam standing behind him near the mages. Should I use my spells? Amelia inquired. Not on me. Use them on these 3, Asher instructed, and keep using illumination spells. He then propelled forward using his mana. After a minute of running, they arrived at a fork in the path. They could all feel the vibrations through the walls. How many monsters could cause such vibrations? Damien wondered aloud, making everyone a bit nervous. Are they testing our resolve to fight? Asher considered. He could tell that there weren't enough monsters to cause such vibrations. Instead, it was the work of the runes producing spells that mimicked that effect. Get ready to fight, Asher instructed, focusing his aura on the edge of his sword. They heard a chorus of monstrous roars in the distance. The anticipation of not knowing what kind of monster they were about to face made them a bit nervous, but they were ready for it. Each of them prepared to attack the moment they saw the monsters. What kind of beast is that? Sam asked, confused at the sight of several 4-legged beasts with 3 tails and 3 eyes charging toward them. Behind the beasts, 4 massive monsters followed. Are these Clausen monsters? Amelia guessed, looking at the 3 tails and eyes, a characteristic of 2 types of monsters known to live together. The Clausen were the large monsters behind the beasts, which were called sensots. Aim for the knees of the big ones. The beasts are vulnerable to fire spells, Amelia shouted, relaying their weaknesses. Sam heard her and glanced at Damien, who had coated his shield with aura. I'll take the lead, Asher said, confusing Damien. With a technique called mere steps, he dashed toward the group of Clausen monsters. Seeing Asher, 2 massive Clausen conjured claws made of earth elements on their hands. Swift strike, Asher thought, creating another platform in the air with shadow control and dashing towards the nearest Clausen monster. Is he really a first year? The 3rd professor wondered, watching Asher. The monster tried to smash Asher with its hand but was too slow. Host has gained 200 express. Asher's sword cut through the Clausen monster, the brown-skinned creature slumping to the ground as its head rolled to the side. Spiral Lance, Alyssa chanted, using her ice element spell. Multiple spikes of ice emerged from the ground, impaling the monster's chest from all sides. The monster shrieked in pain. But the sensops all around them were still a significant problem. Even though Asher was dealing with the Clausen monsters, the sensops themselves were challenging to handle. Their 3 eyes improved their vision and field of view. Grant strength. Amelia started chanting as Sam and Damien felt a surge in their power. A sensop lunged at Sam while Damien managed to halt 3 of them with his shield. These beasts are so creepy, Sam said, looking around at the 3-eyed beast staring at him. Due to the dim light, they couldn't ascertain the exact number of dark gray-skinned sensops. Move, Vanessa shouted, slashing the neck of the sensop in front of Sam. I'll stay in the middle, Sam decided, leaving Vanessa near Damien to fight off the sensops. Alyssa noticed they were getting overwhelmed by the sensops, so instead of killing the next Clausen, she targeted a group of sensops, closing in on Amelia. Should we begin the 3rd part for them as well? The 3rd professor suggested. Let's do that after they've taken care of most of the monsters, Elsa intervened. They were ramping up the difficulty for Asher's team quite significantly. By the way, the first team has already moved past the 2nd part, Elsa said. At that moment, Kevin's team was nearing the center of the dungeon much quicker. But unlike them, they're not taking the fastest route, Arman pointed out. Only Asher's team was on the shortest route to the center, while Kevin and his team were still figuring their way through. Proxy connection failed. I wanted to save that artifact for later, Kevin said, looking back at the group of annihilated monsters. Well, we saved a lot of time with that, Elena told Kevin. And we need you to conserve your mana for later, Elena added, looking at Kevin. Yeah, I will support you guys from this point, Kevin affirmed, turning to Matthew and Licia. Okay, Matthew responded, unbothered. They had just encountered multiple wall crawlers in the narrow path. True to their names, these were human-shaped monsters with large limbs that helped them crawl on surfaces. Elena, however, used a fire spell C-rank artifact, annihilating all 15 wall crawlers that were rushing towards them. As they were early D-rank monsters, they all got burnt to death by the artifact's power. We can't use it for now, Elena announced, putting the bracelet inside her spatial ring. Unlike before, the red gem on the bracelet had become dull, indicating that it needed time to recharge. Which path should we choose now? They questioned, looking at 4 different paths. Let's go with the one on the left, Kevin suggested. Elena nodded, and Kevin stepped back, moving with Eva. Meanwhile, Matthew took his place as they delved deeper into the dungeon. How much time do you think it will take for them to reach the center? The 3rd professor inquired. We have sent them on the 2 shortest starting points out of the 4, the 4th professor replied. If they take more than 15 hours to arrive there, I can't say I wouldn't be disappointed, he confessed, adding. After all, this is a cleared dungeon. An uncleared maze dungeon takes weeks to clear. Currently, the boss monster was dead, and the dungeon relic was removed, so the maze dungeon wasn't at its peak difficulty. If it were an uncleared maze dungeon, a lot of conditions would need to be met and, of course, the paths kept changing. All these factors made maze dungeons a nightmare for hunters. Their attention shifted towards Asher's team that had defeated the Sensups and all the Clausens. Should we slow down a bit? Damien, who was breathing heavily, asked Asher. He had noticed that Asher was the one who had defeated most of the Clausen's monsters, but their whole team would tire out soon if they maintained their current pace. Asher surveyed his team and, apart from him and Alyssa, all of them were breathing roughly. Using so much mana in such a short amount of time wore their bodies out quickly. We can slow down for an hour, Amelia suggested. She proposed this duration because it would take them hours to reach the center and, being a race, they couldn't afford to take a full rest. This was not a dungeon clear mission that would allow them to rest for long hours to recover. Ads by Pub Future. Okay, Asher agreed, turning his gaze deeper into the dungeon where various rune traps awaited. He was certain that many traps would be intentionally used on them. As Asher was dodging all the rune traps, the professors in charge would manually activate them. This test was designed to measure a student's wits, resolve, and endurance. They needed to counter the monsters with their weaknesses using the knowledge they had gained at World Academy. Also, the extreme situations resulting from numerous monsters and rune traps could cause them to lose courage and become anxious. Having enough resolve to make it to the center was necessary. And lastly, there was endurance, as this was a race you needed to traverse the dungeon quickly while maintaining your mana to respond to any situation that arose. Amelia, with the Greville blood coursing through her veins, was the only one who recovered the fastest. During their journey, they encountered various traps of different elements. Should I keep casting the mana barrier? Amelia asked as the barrage of fire arrows ceased. No, I will alert you about traps, Asher replied. This should be enough for them, Asher speculated. The number of traps they had faced in the last 2 hours was quite high, from a barrage of arrows, various spells, to places where the walls collapsed. If Asher hadn't alerted them beforehand, there was a high chance that one of them would have surely been caught in those rune formations. Less than host has gained 100 EXP greater than. They encountered various groups of monsters, with Asher defeating a few of them and leaving the rest to his team. Less than host has gained 100 EXP greater than. Less than host has gained 150 EXP greater than. Less than host has gained 100 EXP greater than. Ignoring the system notifications, Asher continued moving deeper into the dungeon. At this point, Kevin Whiteheart's team will reach the center first, the third professor announced, observing the progress of the two teams. Well, we can't interfere from this point on, Elsa added. Those guys got lucky that the longest path didn't have too many difficult monsters for them, the fourth professor remarked, glancing at Kevin's team. Well, they still need to pass the final part in the center of the maze as well, he added. They watched as Asher's team fought various types of monsters. It's been 8 hours already, Damien declared, finishing off the last monster with his shield. We should be near the center, Vanessa added. Hope so. We need to fetch the medallion quickly, Sam chimed in, leaning on his spear. The team had grown somewhat more comfortable around each other, except for Alyssa who kept her distance. She detested all elite families, but she tolerated her presence in Asher's team. This was the least she thought she could do for Asher, as he had helped her greatly for reasons unknown to her. Alyssa's dull eyes fell on Asher, whose armor was stained with blood. Is he trying to hide his strength as well? She wondered. She was well aware of Asher's capabilities, and even now, as he seemed to be at the peak of D rank somehow, Alyssa speculated that Asher could potentially complete this race on his own. It was rare for a swordsman to have so much mana, but his unwavering endurance reflected in his physical and mental strength. Throughout the ordeal, Asher hadn't sat down once while his entire team, including Alyssa, had rested for at least 5 minutes. 1 hour away, Asher could sense that the center of the maze was near. A significant amount of mana gathered at that place. Is that the final test? He pondered. This has taken longer than needed, he thought, studying the path ahead. We will run at full speed from here, Asher instructed, turning to his team. What about the rune traps? Damien inquired. Don't worry about them, Asher replied. Knowing Asher, Damien got up. Asher was the team leader, and they had been following his decisions so far. Vanessa avoided questioning Asher directly, so she would only discuss their plans with Sam and Damien or with Amelia and Alyssa depending on the situation. Even though other students might have felt awkward among elite families' kids, Vanessa was herself from the DeMarcus family, so she felt comfortable conversing with them. Well, you should go forward, I will handle the rear, Vanessa told Sam as she moved towards Alyssa. They fell into their formation, with all eyes on Asher. This should be enough, Asher announced, flaring his mana as he picked up a few rocks. And one by one, Asher started throwing the stones he had picked up, each coated with his aura, and most of them hit the traps, activating them. Suddenly, a wave of large explosions and triggered spells washed over them. The impact and noise of the traps were felt by everyone behind Asher as they observed the spectacle unfolding before them. Isn't that number of traps a bit too much? Sam questioned, an awkward smile on his face. I agree, Damien replied, lifting his shield protectively. Looking at Asher, who was now dashing forward, he followed suit, as did every other team member. As they traversed the paths, they noticed a few dead monsters scattered around. Was he picking all those stones earlier for this? Sam mumbled, recalling how he'd seen Asher collect stones and put them into his spatial ring without understanding the reasoning behind it. Currently, Asher's mana was flaring as he threw powerfully charged projectiles, each coated in his aura. It was a practical application of a new skill he'd learned from his sword art. Though it was fundamentally a defensive skill, with a little modification, it could be used in a way that allowed Asher to strengthen an object with his aura, even when he was no longer in contact with it. After running straight for 40 minutes, hearing various traps going off around them, the team was astounded by Asher's accuracy in pinpointing the traps. Asher was currently using a significant amount of mana to increase his mana sensitivity significantly. As they neared the center, Asher spotted a group of beasts similar to the senseps they had first encountered. Rather than wasting time, Asher dashed forward. Not even bothering to draw his sword, Asher used his hand, coated with his aura, to seize the beast by its jaw and slam it into the ground, killing it instantly. Shadowbind, he spoke, and chains materialized, strangling all the other senseps surrounding him. Ignoring the shrieking monsters as they were strangled to death, Asher turned his attention to the center of the dungeon, contemporary romance. So, it's behind this gate, Asher declared, reaching the center of the dungeon.